Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrikin, and joining me today is very special guest, Rhode Island FC defender Stephen Turnbull. Stephen, welcome to the pod. How are you doing?
Good, Matt. Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here. So yeah, thanks for having me.
We have been so excited to have you back on. We haven't had a chance to really connect since the preseason when you were on your way to Bermuda. I got to ask, you were born and raised in New York. You've spent a majority of your life and your soccer career there. As a Long Island native, how are you ranking your time in Rhode Island so far? And we won't let anyone know back in New York, I promise.
Yeah, it's been really good. I think it's a really welcoming community. Um, I wish I would go venture out and do more things with my free time, but being away from home, we spend a lot of weekends traveling back to Long Island to see family and friends that we don't get to see so frequently. But I've been down to Newport, Narragansett, really nice areas. I thought Newport was amazing. Kind of gives like that Hamptons, Montauk vibe that you get with Long Island. Which was really cool because that's a really fun place. But yeah, I mean, I would rank it definitely. I guess you'd have to go with places that you've lived as opposed to like places that you've been because you really have to live somewhere to know the ins and outs. So I'd probably rank it top three. I spent some time in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and playing for a what is now a USL2 team, and that was really fun. That city is awesome, like really cool college town. So I'd probably have to put that second. But Rhode Island is definitely in my top three.
Speaking of family, friends, Narragansett, did you lose any street cred on your getting engaged in the smallest state? Which, by the way, congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. No, I didn't lose any. Obviously, my some of my friends made it, but other ones were like, how are you gonna do this all the way in Rhode Island? So, like, we want to be a part of it, but it's so far, which is totally fair because it is a bit of a drive to ask people to do, especially on a weekend like Fourth of July weekend. But it was incredible. Everything that I had planned and wanted to execute on just went perfectly. Huge shout out to my mom, my sister, and my dad. I mean, they killed it. They helped me a lot. So yeah, it was really good.
Speaking of your family, kind of getting into the soccer side of things, you've often credited them in multiple interviews and stories you've shared as the driving force behind giving you the ability to pursue this soccer career. You mentioned in your story with the club about how your dad was just tireless as a champion, always making sure that any opportunity afforded to you could be given. What was that like growing up in New York? Getting your soccer kind of acumen built with your family's support.
Yeah, my family, they they mean everything to me. And the support that they've given me, even becoming a pro, has been amazing. But growing up, you know, just like any other kid, you rely on your parents a lot to get you to training, and it's a lot for them, because they work jobs all day long, and then they rush home to take you to wherever you have to be for training. They sit there and watch training until 8 9 p.m., drive you home, go to bed, wake up the next day, and they do that 3 4, depending on what team you play for, sometimes 5 days a week. So it's a huge commitment for parents. Obviously, like, it pays back for them to, in different areas. Sometimes it pays back for them because their kids have an enjoyment, and they make friends, and they create memories, and all that kind of stuff. And then for some parents, their kids go to college for free. They become pros, they get to watch them play and chase their dreams, and all that kind of stuff. So I think it gives back return in some ways. But it's a massive sacrifice that every parent has to make, that takes their kids to training every night after working a full day. So yeah, I'm just always grateful for them. They did a lot for me and my sister. It wasn't only me. So me and my sister both played collegiately soccer. So just our whole lives playing soccer. So it's yeah, it was a huge commitment from them, and honestly, like, super grateful for that.
Well, I mean, like you said, it paid dividends because you ended up joining New York City FC2 in what was interesting. I didn't know this at the time. Their inaugural year of fielding an academy, a two team, fresh off of their 2021 MLS Cup win. How
Yes.
did that happen? Was that like a sort of open tryout? You were right time, right place because you were a New Yorker. Like, what was the connection to that? Considering I think the last time you played competitive minutes was with the Stony Brook Seawolves the summer prior, right?
Yeah. I think my last year was a spring year because it was COVID. So that fall, what was supposed to be my last fall had gotten canceled, and then they moved it to the spring. Um, I ended up playing that spring season, and then that was my last of college. I want to say it was 2020. I believe it was 2020. And yeah, it wasn't even a full year. It was like only like 8 games or so. So yeah, there wasn't a whole lot to play there. But then yeah, I just went into kind of like a grace period where I was like trialing the teams and going to combines and stuff like that, like trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And then yeah, and then I just got a call from a guy who worked in the NYCFC Academy, and he was just like, hey, we're having this closed door game for a bunch of people in the area that we want to take a look at. Would you be willing to play, whatever? And I said, yeah, of course, no problem. I was looking for a team anyways, so I was like, this is a good chance. um and and yeah, I just went and just played and did really well. And I think it didn't really take much of them seeing me to kind of convince them that they wanted to bring me in. And that league itself, that MLS Next Pro League, was in its inaugural year. So it was the first year for that league, and it was. I always saw it as a stepping stone. When I went in there, I had a goal and I had a plan, and the reason I liked the idea of NYCFC 2 so much was because I was like, this is a direct path to the first team, which is where I want to be. So that's why I like this opportunity so much. I probably could have just went to play in the USL instead, but I knew that I wanted to, get to the top level. I wanted to play in the MLS. So I felt like this was my easiest and most direct route. And that's, ultimately what it turned out to be.
A lot of academy programs in the MLS, they've benefited from 10, 15, 20 years of figuring out what works for domestic players and how to integrate them into that senior squad. But that wasn't the case, right? This is a program that was basically getting its feet under them while you're trying to do the same to get a look into that senior team. What was it? I mean, I know you don't really have a fair comparison here, but like, what was that like? Was it just the wild, wild west as an academy, a two team in a brand new league was trying to figure things out?
Um, I don't think so. To be honest, it was pretty organized. I think, like, maybe what you can say is like facilities and maybe logistics were probably the biggest challenge when it came to like organization and things like that. As far as like putting a team together, um, we signed a bunch of guys that were recent college graduates or young players who decided not to go off to college, but talented young guys, and then they honestly just filled the rest with their academy team. Because they no longer had a U19s, so the highest age group was U17s. So, and there's kind of a period between the end of your U17 season and when you go off to college. So, and some of those kids who are more developed and better players at that point in their lives were able to get more time with the second team, and it created opportunities for them as well. And plus you can send down first team guys who don't get a lot of minutes throughout the season. So like they did a good job of filling the holes with, you know, say they signed 12 guys to second team contracts, the other six or, whatever they needed for that game, they did a good job to fill the holes. And it was a lot of up and down, a lot of movement, a lot of, new faces in training all the time. But, for the most part, like it flowed pretty easily. Um, and yeah, the coach of the team, like he was awesome, like top guy. And yeah, we had a great time. My first year there, we had a blast. Honestly, it was like first year, new league. We were just enjoying it. We had some ballers on that squad, and yeah, we were just enjoying it.
It's interesting because in terms of minutes, a really fun fact about NYCFC2's first campaign in that 2022 season, you played every game but one. But I learned something fascinating about MLS Next Pro. So I got to ask you, what was it like reliving the MLS shootout era with the next pro games finishing in penalty shootouts to determine instead of like having a game end in a draw? That had to have been either super exciting or super nerve wracking. What was it like for you going into that like quasi shootout era yourself?
Yeah, I think it was a cool thing that they added to the league, because it's kind of like, it's kind of a league that's like meant for growth. Like it's not really meant for like, I guess like players playing at a super high level. It's more meant for like younger players to get, minutes and exposure and growth and stuff like that. And I think like that moment kind of puts some pressure on players that like, you know, usually wouldn't feel the pressure if it just ended in a draw. So it kind of gives a little bit more to the game. From a spectator standpoint, I can't really say that there was a lot of games in that league that really had, too many fans. So I don't know how that looks from that standpoint. But what I will say is like it was another thing that added to the league that was like, kind of fun, because you play 90 minutes and you walk away with a draw and you're just like, like we just played that whole game, and we don't even come out with a winner. And then you just go into, a quick PK shootout. And sometimes like, the thing with the PK shootout is sometimes you might have earned a hard point on the road and then you go into a PK shootout and you lose and now you just feel like you lost. Or you earned a hard point, you go into the PK shootout, you win the PK shootout, you walk away with 2 points and you feel like you won. So like it's one of those things that just added like something different to the league. I can't really say whether I liked it or not. I was never big on taking PKs, so I most of the time I didn't even shoot. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I think it was a cool touch to a league that was just getting its feet under itself.
So your next year, you sign with NYCFC's senior team under coach Nick Cushing. I got to ask, can you describe what it felt like to make that debut, even if it was in extra time against Chicago Fire at Soldier Field? Like, did you
Yeah.
feel like the culmination of everything? Did you feel like you made it? Like, walk us through what that was like.
Um, yeah, I think when you look at it before it happens, like you think about how special the moment will be and all this kind of whatever. And um for me it was like a little like I don't know. I guess like when it happens you're super excited, but like you just have so much going on. Like you're trying to prepare. Like I was trying to get set pieces information. Like I'm trying to hold out like a result here. Like it's, you're going into a period of the game where it's not like, okay, you're up 3-0 and now you're just going to go out there, make your debut, run around, have some fun, like enjoy a really special moment. Like I went into like high stress environment. Like we're on the road, we're trying to get a result. Got to keep the game where it is right now. And it was super late in the game. So I'm trying to get set piece information. I'm trying to put my shin guards on. Like, everything was just happening so quickly that I just sprinted onto the field and yeah, you just kind of black out a little bit. And then after it's done, obviously, you come down a little bit, and it's definitely a good moment. And yeah, I was super happy to make my debut. But honestly, like nowhere near as happy as I was to make my first start, because that for me was way more meaningful and emotional to me than just coming on in stoppage time against Chicago.
Speaking of starts and playing in front of fans, I actually didn't know this until recently. A lot of MLS fans know that NYCFC got their starts playing at Yankee Stadium, but a lot of, and in fact, so much so that it earned the nickname the postage stamp around the league because of the size of the field dimensions. But a lot of fans in the league don't realize that New York City FC also plays at Citi Field.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's kind of like maybe intentionally by design if you're not a dedicated NY guy. But I have to ask you, what was it like knowing that you were the constant guest of another team in another sport's home? And was that ever a disadvantage for you? Because you might not even be at the same facility the next week.
I don't honestly no. I don't think that it was ever a disadvantage for us, because I think, like, if anything, it was kind of an advantage, because we were really the only ones who knew what to expect with that field. Yankee Stadium is a very small pitch, like very condensed pitch. And just the style of play, like within New York City, like it just fits so much better, because everything is on the ground. The spaces are tighter, which is where you're training all week to play in. So like it was a lot easier for us to play in that stadium than it was for anybody else to come there, because like, and they kind of make like a joke about it. Oh, like they don't even play in a soccer stadium. Like, you see like a ton of memes of like coaches like doing interviews before the games and like talking about how they're about to go play in a baseball field. Like, so it it's one of those things that's tricky, just because New York is New York. Like, to build a stadium in New York is like, I mean, it's almost impossible. It's very hard to do something like that. As far as like, just real estate itself is concerned. They're trying to build it now, and they have to jump through a ton of hoops just to be able to break ground. So New York is a unique state, so it's very difficult to do something like that. And the change of venue, like going from Yankee to City, I mean, for me it never mattered, to be honest. Like, I personally, um, a lot of guys on the team like City Field better. They get a better crowd there. You could say the pitch is better. But for me, like, it never really mattered. Honestly, I was just happy to be there. I was just happy to be out there. And to play in, you know, Queens or the Bronx, it didn't really matter. Like, it was all cool to me. Um, so yeah, and honestly, those are historic stadiums in New York. So like, if you grow up a New Yorker, like, to be able to play in Yankee Stadium is like awesome. Like, people worship the Yankees in New York. So, and if they don't worship the Yankees, they worship the Mets. So yeah, it was just a cool experience, regardless of where the game was, honestly.
I was going to say, from a bragging perspective, which one do you like to tell people more? And does that impact anything based on your baseball alliance?
Yeah, definitely a little biased, because I am a Yankee fan. Not that I really watch much baseball, because I'm not huge into baseball, but I am a Yankee fan. Grew up in a family full of Yankee fans, so yeah, I'll definitely brag a bit more about the Yankee Stadium one for sure.
You
Um,
may have lost a little bit of Rhode Island street cred today, since this
yeah,
is Red Sox town. But
yeah.
does any of the temporariness of this resonate with what Rhode Island FC is going on with today, dealing with Burns Stadium, knowing that Tidewater is next year? Like, do you see the similarities there, or is it apples to oranges?
No, yeah, I definitely do. Obviously, you don't have the change of venue, so you have, the the constant that you're going to be at Burns Stadium, and you know, and it's tough. Like I would say for games, it's not really much of an issue. Um, but I would say like more like day to day, like using it as a training ground is more challenging with, you know, like this period of the last few months has been the easiest part because of college break and stuff like that. But, you know, once the football season starts and you have all the college teams and students back on campus, like, you know, it makes things like really complicated. And you almost feel like you're like a stranger in somebody else's house, you know. Which is, you know, just part of it, you know. So yeah, I would say that that's kind of a similar feeling. But you know, then again, like, you know, last year when we played games, like we were the only ones in the stadium, so you didn't really notice it as much. So yeah, and the training ground is different. So that's how I would compare them. But yeah, just like day to day things, I'd say maybe like sometimes it's like a little challenging, but honestly, once you forget about it and stop thinking about whether it's a big deal to you or not, you don't even care anymore. You know, so it just becomes way easier when you just say, you know what, this is where we train. This is, you know, how it goes. So
Right.
so yeah, yeah.
So your 2023 season saw you primarily play as a right midfielder, yet despite the fact that with the two squad you were positioned as primarily a fullback, just to ask, kind of going through that, was that something where you were meeting the needs and expectation of the coach, or did they kind of always see you lifting and shifting more into that midfield position? Can you walk us through like what was that process to go through that, and what were the demands of you on the year?
Yeah. Similar to here, to my time with Rhode Island FC. You know, we played in a system that required wingbacks. You know, so we played a 3-4-3 last year in the games that I was a part of. Um, we started off in a back four, and then due to some injuries and like center backs and stuff like that, they decided to go to back three with two wing backs, and then a front three, which was really good, honestly, because for me it was a great position because I had a player in front of me, like a winger that I was able to, you know, link through and overlap, underlap, get around, play with, combine with. You know, so it was a good formation for me. And obviously not something that I've played a ton of because I haven't really played a lot of wingback in my days, you know, playing uh, you know, senior football and even like, you know, college level, you know, all that stuff. I never really played as a wingback. So I'm more of a traditional right back, back four kind of guy, like, you know, get up and down. But but yeah, it was a good experience for me to kind of get that under my belt a little bit. And yeah, just, you know, the coaches felt like I was doing a good job in training, and it warranted an opportunity. And we had a few injuries going on, and there was some availability in the starting lineup, and they ended up giving me the shot. And you know, I just played well with my opportunity. I just, you know, had good performances, and you know, playing time continued and continued as you know, I was putting in good performances. So
I'm
yeah.
I'm glad you say that, because I noticed in the minutes where you were on for New York City, the results were primarily positive. A lot of draws, but
Yeah.
still you were getting points, and you were putting in a solid effort on all of your performances on the day. But it seemed like in the games where you weren't getting included, it was that switchback where Coach Cushing maybe readopted the 4-3-3, and maybe that was a place where, based on whatever lineups and opportunities he had, it wasn't quite the system of the day for you as a player trying to get those minutes, and you're having these great performances. What do you do to make sure that your contribution continues to thrive when a formation change like that happens, and suddenly it's not the same one that you were playing in a week before?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and realistically, it's the basis of what I dealt with last year. It's just one of those things that's if you look at it realistically, we had three right backs last year in my position. And I was the oldest of the three. So, and those other guys are, high marketed players, and they're top players. And me coming from the second team, graduating, and being in the first team, my first year in the MLS, like, you know, I didn't really think that, you know, it was going to be easy for me to even try and win that position, because it's difficult. It's difficult when you have a scenario like that where you have like young, marketable players um, in your position that can ultimately turn profits for clubs and stuff like that. It's tough to be like kind of like an American player trying to win that spot. And so when the results weren't really going the way that we needed, I was able to step in and turn losses to draws. Get a few get a win or two, and some really good performances that like we were really putting pieces together. And then, like I kind of always knew in the back of my mind that, maybe I was on borrowed time a little bit. Guys were going to come back from injury, and eventually the formation was going to change, and we were going to do, something different, go back to back four, and I kind of knew in the back of my mind that was going to happen. So just try to prepare myself for it. That's really all you can do is like, when you know something's about to come, just prepare yourself for it so that when it does happen, you're ultimately not overly disappointed. So yeah.
So I think that is something that the best players, they adapt and they learn, right? So kudos to you on that and having that vision. Last New York question before we move on to Rhode Island. Growing up as a New Yorker, what was your take on the Red Bulls? Maybe you knew them as the Metro Stars as a kid, thinking of like as a youthful hopeful to maybe get into the professional soccer world at that point, and then eventually becoming a professional player that played on the club that was in New York City. What's your take on the Red Bulls overall as a New Yorker?
I mean, honestly, the when I was growing up, the Red Bulls were the only team around. So, I was a
Not
fan.
a Cosmos guy.
No, yeah, the Cosmos as well. Yeah, the New York Cosmos as well. Yeah, they were, yeah, obviously different league, but still, top team, the Cosmos. But yeah, the Red Bulls were the only team around the MLS. So I was definitely I wouldn't say I was a fan, like but like I supported them. Like if somebody was like, "Oh, what's your MLS team?" I'd be like, "Oh, the Red Bulls." Like growing up, obviously now I would totally change my opinion, but but growing up, that's how it was. Because they were the only team around. And me and my dad, we'd go to games and stuff like that. So it was the only team around. And even though it's a little far, like Jersey's a little far from Long Island, but we still used to go to games. The arena's nice over there. It's a really nice field that they have. I actually got a few friends who play at the Red Bulls right now. So yeah, like always wish them well, but when it comes down to a derby match, I'm not gonna pull for them to win. So
We won't tell Amos that you feel. I'm sure it's known between the two of you.
yeah.
But speaking of the derby, this is often credited as the first local domestic derby because New York City was the first one to enter before LA, and then the Florida teams kind of came back together. How legitimate is that derby as you've grown up around it, played in it? And then the second question is how does that derby relate to your first experience with the Hartford and Rhode Island derby?
Yeah, honestly, I think like any derbies are like similar. It gets chippy. Tempers flare. Things get a little crazy. I think that's pretty standard for any of them, and it definitely was for the Hudson River Derby. Was always like, one of those that's like two complete opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to style of play and all that kind of stuff. New York City looks to put the ball down and play. Rebels look to counterattack, play balls in behind. So like two complete different sides of the spectrum, but it's always going to be a good game. Like even though the styles are so different, it's always going to be a good game. And yeah, like those games, like playing or even just watching, being on the bench, whatever it was, like the environment and just seeing like the way that the fans get into it. It gives you like like a good feeling about it. So yeah, it was always good. And the same for the one with Hartford. Honestly, we had a lot of traveling fans, which I thought was awesome. I think we filled up like a whole section of the bleachers with RIFC fans, which was awesome and great for us to see as players. And you could say the same for that game. I think it was chippy, it was end to end, it was lots of opportunities, lots of chances, and obviously it ultimately ended up 1-1. But I think easily it could have been a win for us for sure. But I think that there was definitely more goals to be had in that game. So yeah, no, that I think that that's a good rivalry that will grow, over the years, just given how close they are in distance.
Have you guys internalized any name for it? Like you said with the New York one, it's the Hudson River. There's been workshops, there's been fans on both sides trying to name this. Have you guys heard anything back at the inside of the
Yeah.
club?
No, we haven't. To be honest, we haven't. I saw that there was maybe a story or something put up. I know my dad had put in a submittal for what he thinks it should be called, which I don't.
Do
Which
we
I
know what it is?
No, I don't remember. I'd have to ask him. Yeah, but yeah, we haven't heard anything. But there's some creative people out there. I'm sure somebody's gonna win the win the name prize.
It's
So
gonna be fun. It's gonna be.
yeah,
I won't lead the witness here. So when you hear it organically, we'll check back in.
yeah,
But But speaking of RIFC, getting into this, you signed with us in December, a very early player at the beginning of this club's journey. And at the time that you signed, you did have the highest domestic pedigree coming into the club. I got to ask you, what was going through your head going from MLS to attaching yourself to a team that didn't exist the year before, but probably wasn't on your radar?
yeah.
What were the elements that attracted you to this club?
Um, yeah. It's one of those things that like sometimes you just get like a good feeling about it. And maybe, yeah, you don't think, for me personally, like I didn't think about all I didn't say to myself, oh, this is going to be a first year team. You're going to have a lot of challenges with this. Like I didn't think about those things, which is good, because it didn't weigh in on my selection at all. And yeah, when you just get a good feeling about something, that it's like the better choice to make. And that's how it was for me. Like I had, me and Kano sat down and we had, a face to face meeting for like an hour. He had this whole presentation and explained to me this is what this will look like. He gave everything to me straight. He showed his interest in me as a coach. Told me what his expectations are, told me what his visions are for me and for the team. And I just thought he did a really good job to like kind of persuade me per se to come here. And yeah, it's been great. It's been great since obviously the year started off a little slower, but since then, it's been great.
Were you excited, or did you even anticipate the idea that you would continue that right wing back modality that you had shown in New York, or were you thinking you might slot back to a more traditional fullback on the next team that you were going to be a part of?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about what it would look like for me, and And we did discuss that I would be playing more in a traditional right back scenario, which was something that really excited me because that's the position that I really like to be in. Traditional back four, traditional right back, and then obviously personnel and field decisions. Ultimately it just ends up being that they have to pick the best team possible to get the best results with the personnel that they are given. And sometimes you might have to move into a position that you don't really like as much. Which is what has happened with me. But like when the team is getting results and they're winning, and you're still able to do what you want to do and be out there and enjoy it, like it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it's obviously not my favorite position. I wouldn't say like I prefer it over playing in a back four, playing in a back five. Definitely don't prefer it, but you know what, like the team's getting results and it's what we need, so like I'm happy to do the job. So
Speaking of this run of form, the last time we talked to you in a post-game interview was coming off of the 2-0 loss to Detroit. At the time, you had mentioned that the locker room was beating themselves up because of the string of performances, a lot of draws at that moment, a lot of 0-0 performances, and a couple of losses with only one win at that time on the season. First question, just to get it out in the air: how is the locker room feeling today with this string of performances, this run of form that's been going on so far?
yeah, it's great. Honestly, everybody's in really good spirits. We have a good squad, a good group of guys. Everybody likes to have fun and compete, and that's the most important part. We have guys who maybe feel like they deserve to play more minutes, and so just trying to get the most out of everybody is always the most difficult scenario, I would say. But our locker room has been great. These guys, they show up every day and they train hard, and even today it was match day -1. We had a fun match day -1. Everybody's hyped up in good spirits. We're back home after two road games, so it's all good vibes. It's all good vibes.
To kind of tee up to that too, when we asked you at the time what you thought was missing from the results back then, you had mentioned some clinical finishing, some goal scoring. Obviously, that has transformed since we last talked about it. Got to ask you, what do you think finally clicked for this group?
I think like honestly, having JJ come back was massive for us because it gives us a different dynamic to our game, and it makes us a little more difficult to deal with just because JJ's big target nine, likes to hold the ball up, good in the box, dangerous in the box. Like he adds a different dimension to our team that I feel like before we didn't have. So having the partnership between him and Dequa up top is huge for us. It's changed a lot of things, especially in the attack. You look at like I don't know. I'm not really like a data or a metrics guy, but if you look back, I'm sure like after JJ came back, the amount of goals that we were scoring per game probably went up massively. And and that's not to say like, oh, like JJ scoring all the goals, that kind of thing, but he just adds a different layer to the team that I feel like we really needed. And it's given the ability not only for him but for other guys as well to play off of him, or like do things like that. So I think that has been a big help for us. And then another thing that it just comes down to, I think, is just like confidence. Like just putting I think that Louisville game was a real turning point for us. Being able to go there, and they have like an immaculate home record, like to go there and put five on them, like that was like the best feeling, So like I think moments like that kind of catch fire a little bit. And yeah, you just start to, just put things together. And yeah, I think that's just the ultimate thing that's been happening.
Yeah, you guys have definitely been road warriors, no pun intended, with the majority of the wins this year coming away. The only win being El Paso Locomotive at home. What's really interesting is I was talking with Zach Haribo on the last interview we did, and he mentioned that the team and Coach Kano's next big focus is going after repairing that home record and converting it into a winning record in front of fans. I got to ask, like, besides the fact that there seems to be a little bit of a difficulty to earn those points home, what do you think is going into that now as this club continues to perform? Is it the opposing teams are just showing up knowing they're going to have such a tough time of it that like they're playing extra hard against you? What's going on? What do you think's the missing component to get points at home?
Um, honestly, I don't know. It's a tough question, and I wish the answer was clear, and we could just say like this is the reason why, and then we could try our best to solve it. I think it's just like I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know what the best answer for that is. I can what I can say is like sometimes as a pro player, like it's easier to play on the road than it is to play at home. Because like when you're on the road, you don't have any distractions. Like you're just like you fly in, you eat your meals, you sit in your room, you watch whatever you want to watch, do whatever you do, read a book, I don't know, whatever, people like to do. You do that and then you go play the game and you just go home. Like it's just like the most some people might consider it boring, but like you literally just sit there and, you eat the meals at a scheduled time, you chill out the rest of the time, and you just go play the game and then you just go home, you know? And when you're at home, at least like for me, like talk about your parents coming in for the weekend, you're hosting here, they're staying with you in the apartment. You got my nephew who's very very young. He comes, my sister, my brother-in-law, everybody's here. So like it's like that extra stress of like having people around and like worrying about giving out tickets and like um things like that. I think sometimes it adds pressure to people, um and sometimes can make things a little difficult. Also, I think what we needed to stop doing was putting so much pressure on winning at home, because when we didn't get that first win at home for a while and we were chasing that first victory until we went all the way until we went to Las Vegas, I think everybody was kind of like, we need to win at home, we need to get our first win at home, and there was so much pressure around just getting that win at home that I feel like we almost like took ourselves away from it. And I think like the way that we are now, the form that the team is in, like whether we're playing home or away, it doesn't really matter. Like the main aspect should just be winning the game. And I think as long as we just focus on winning, regardless of who we're playing or where we're playing, like we're not going to have any issues.
I think actually that's the most profound thing I've heard in a long time when it comes to player mentality. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because Kano said something after the Indy 11 game that he firmly believes that this squad can now compete with any team in the league. So I guess I would ask you, if the season were to end today, knowing where we're at with the playoffs, who's the team you're the most excited to go and face, regardless of if it's home or away, in a single game elimination? If I had to put you on the spot, what's the team that you're like the most excited to, like, we're gonna go play them and we're gonna go advance up the playoff standings?
It's a good question. Let me think about who's in front of us. Um,
So right now, the top four, if you because you'd be playing an away seed to a home berth, you'd have Louisville, Charleston, Tampa Bay, and Indy 11. Who's the most
yeah,
excited?
honestly, I'll take Louisville on the road again. I'll definitely take that game again. Um, you know, some people might think like, that's probably not a good idea, but honestly, I would take that game again. Honestly, I'd probably take any of those opponents, especially the ones who play on grass, because playing on grass is just far better. So yeah, definitely any of those grass pitches. Although I've seen some film on Charleston, I don't know how good their grass pitch looks, but yeah, any of those grass pitches would be nice. Would be nice to play on. So
All right.
yeah.
You're hearing it. You're hearing it first. Last two questions, Stephen. Since the season kicked off, you've gone on to win multiple accolades with RIFC, including the first ever Defiance Man of the Match. You've got 2 USL Team of the Week nods, a couple of bench recognitions. I don't know how players like calculate that. I don't. If you're not in the starting 11, I don't know if that's even worth mentioning. You rank in the top for minutes played on the season. You've seen the club's highs, you've seen the club's lowest lows. What memory stands out the most to you this season as you look back so far?
Um. Wow. Um. That's a tough question. There's been a lot of highs. Decent amount of lows. But honestly, the ship has been pretty steady the whole year. And I think that when you have a start that we had to the year, you kind of don't allow the high moments to be like particularly too high, because you don't want to get ahead of yourself, and you don't want to say oh, we're this, that, the other thing. So I think like the positive moments are positive, but you try to keep your composure in those moments because you feel like it's where you deserve to be anyways. But I would say the first the first win at home against El Paso was like really nice, especially to win in the way that we did, because it was like pretty chill victory with like a goal late that like kind of sealed the deal. And as opposed to like a nail biter where it's like so I think like even to come off like in that game and like sit on the bench and watch the guys close the game out and like just kind of take in the whole atmosphere was like really nice, just to see like how much it meant to like a lot of people and the fans, especially the supporter section. They've been really patient with us, honestly way more patient than you can expect any supporter section to be, because usually they'd be you know reaming you out for those results, especially at home. But they've been really patient, which as a player, like just makes you, kind of want to give more to them. So I'd say that, that first home win was a nice moment. Just being in the locker room afterwards with everybody, and, just having a nice like wrap up to the weekend. It's always nice like when you have people in town and you win the game, and then you could like go out after and like enjoy it, as opposed to like, the game didn't go your way, and now you're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna call it a night. So,
It's
so
the opposite of that away effect that you were just describing. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, Stephen, the hardest question saved for the end. As a New Yorker, have you tried Rhode Island pizzerias yet? And if so, how do they stack back home?
Yeah.
And any shout outs, any that you would say are worthy of a New Yorker's praise?
um, it's I have tried a pizza here in Rhode Island. Um, I forget the name of the place that I went to be honest, which is not good for me. But it was a place in Providence, and it's like a kind of like a famous pizza spot. Dave Portnoy's been there. So my fiance, she has the One Bite app, so we kind of look at that when we're not in New York to see where good pizzerias are. So we went to that one. And the pizza was pretty good. Honestly, the pizza was pretty good. I can't really complain too much. I had the margarita slice, and it was decent. It was decent. I was not disappointed with it. And I thought it was pretty good. But yeah, I mean, New York pizza is just, it's different. You could pretty much go into any pizzeria and like you're gonna be happy with the pizza, unless you go to like Domino's or Papa John's or something like that. So, but there's a place like in Long Island that's like pretty famous for like, maybe like late night pizza. It's called Little Vincent's. They make like a really fresh, hot cheese regular slice, and then they give you a cup of just cold mozzarella cheese, and you just sprinkle it on. And then the hot pizza with the cold cheese, it's like it's a good mixture. Yeah, it's kind of like a legendary thing for like, me and a few of my friends. If we're ever, doing something late night, we just stop over at Little Vinny's and get some get some cold cheese pizza, and it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
It sounds life changing. I think next year with Brooklyn FC entering that may be the destination when the fans travel down to New York to take on the first championship
Yeah,
club that way. So,
yeah.
Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an honor having you on. We can't wait to see what other accomplishments are in store for you this season. Is there anything else that you want to share with fans? Anything that you want to say before we wrap up?
No, not really. Yeah, just thank you for bringing me on, and it was fun. I enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, no, let's just look forward to tomorrow. Get 3 points.
I love it. I look forward to it as well. In the meantime, you guys can follow us at Instagram at Raising Anchor. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RIFC Podcast. And we also ask that you make sure to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all your New England soccer coverage and RIFC content at www.theblazingmusket.com. And then, of course, we have our website, www.raisinganchorpodcast.com. Stephen, anchors up, and we cannot wait to see you this weekend and all the other games to